You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Welcome to episode 6 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sara.
And I'm Rob. We've got a few updates that really aren't very much updatey, let's put it that way. We are still working on finishing up our Patreon setup and getting our merchandise page ready to go. The RSS feed is up, and I say that in kind of a wish-washy way because we're still running into a few issues with iTunes. We're waiting for some information back, and we will get an update to you as quickly as we can. But for now, you can still go to Podcast Detroit to hear us, or you can go to Google Music, Google Play Music, I should say, and look us up there, and we have our streams, so you can subscribe there as well. We do have that show notes and links now in the Discord. So as we talk about things here on the show and we want to share those items with you and those links that we can't ramble off at high speed, they will be there for you. Yeah, so it's show 6, Sara.
We're doing this. We're hip deep in it now.
I know. I think the part that got me was when I realized I saw the number 6. I was like, oh, we're past the golden 4.
Right.
For those of you who are new to storytelling, which is funny today that we're getting to this topic.
Oh, yeah.
The golden 4 for me is once you get past your 4th session with your players, there's a good chance it's going to keep going. But it's getting past that 4th session. I don't know what it is. And you can't rush that 4th session.
We damn near had a party when mine got past 4.
Oh, yeah.
You were like, oh my God, Sara, it actually happened. You have a campaign now.
Exactly. Shit's getting real. And then you watched, did this new player who just joined, will they make it past their 4th session? You look for that moment. And I know there are people who are listening right now who are like, no, that's solid. That's solid. Four is solid.
Yep, that tracks.
Because you're thinking 3, no, 3's chancy. 1, one shots are one shots. Mm-hmm. Having 2, sure. Once you get to 3, you're like, okay, this is getting serious. That 4th one is always the question.
Yeah, after 3, people start to flake out on you. Mm-hmm. Scheduling concerns start coming up, and all of a sudden, I got childcare. Oh, I can't. I work on Saturdays now, and.
Yep. Or you get a holiday in there somewhere. If you're doing month to month, you're inevitably going to get at least one holiday that throws you off, or a birthday, or a party.
It's always something. That's honestly what got me out of tabletop role playing for a long time and into Warhammer.
Oh yeah, because it's dropping.
Warhammer, you play for an afternoon, man. Everything's a one shot. You
play for an afternoon. An afternoon. Your mission in Warhammer can last the afternoon and well into the next day.
Fight me, Rob. Preferably on a 6x4 table with 2,000 points of troops.
Are we playing fantasy or?
Oh yeah, fantasy's all I do nowadays.
No. Yeah, all those little blocks of dudes. That's just crazy.
No, are you kidding me? That's what speeds the game up. You move one block of troops instead of 20 individual Tyranids.
No. See. Just give me 6 guys in a squad. Spread out over a whole city. Okay. I will take you down.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about this getting started at a storyteller. Now, I know when you were creating some of these notes, because it was something you were super interested in, one of the first things you put in here, I said, this one line that you put in here is a show on its own. And we're literally going to say this, and then we're going to walk away. We're literally drop it and walk away. And that is, when you're going to start a game, there's usually 2 ways that it goes. Either someone finds you, you've already been with people, and they're like, hey, you need to tell a story because you tell good stories, and now there's that. Or you have an idea and you want to run a game. Mm-hmm. So you have to find players. And literally in just saying that, we could go on for 3 shows.
Yes, that is at least an entire show itself. Selecting your group. Having, how to find people nowadays.
How to watch out for people.
How to watch out for, who you want in your group, and more importantly, who you don't want in your group.
Yeah.
that
For
sort of
you.
thing.
I mean-
and really how to deal with different archetypes of people. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think you're gonna end up with different categories of.
You see what we're doing here?
Yeah. I
So we're just going to say this: 3 to 5 is a good number. Let's just leave it at that, and we're going to step away from the from
Yes.
that. We're just going to walk away from that.
3 to 5 players is a good number, and cut. That's
Exactly.
it. That's the whole show. All right.
So what's the next part? Where do we go next here?
Okay. So you want to be a new storyteller?
Yeah.
First, find some friends because you're not going to sit there and play by yourself. That's called writing a book.
That's right. So 3 to 5. 3 to 5.
So 3 to 5 players. Second thing you want to do once you have those friends all together is you need to pick a game system because obviously you've got to play something.
And we've talked about this on the previous shows, like what systems have certain merits and feelings and settings.
Yeah, our entire first show was more or less dedicated to the merits and flaws of different game systems and how those kind of play out on the table and such like that. But there was an aspect I don't think that we really discussed a lot, at least, and that was the kind of difficulty level of different game systems to run.
Oh, you mean like spreadsheets the game?
Spreadsheets the game, or this is a advanced therapy session the game. So there are really kind of two types of games that you want to look out for. And those are rules-heavy games, and those are like deep intrigue and emotional involvement style games. So I'm going to name a couple names here.
Sure.
So we'll throw out a couple games that and look, if these are suggestions. If you're a first-time storyteller and you're sitting there clutching onto your GURPS book right now, going, "Fight me, Sarah," and you're like viciously tweeting at me right now, that's fine.
That's fine.
Run GURPS. Run GURPS. That's fine. But I don't think GURPS is good for a first-time storyteller because it is very rules-dense.
100% agree with you on that.
I also want to add that my boyfriend is at home having an aneurysm right now. Because I'm talking shit about GURPS.
You're not talking shit about GURPS. What you're saying is that GURPS is what is the first letter in GURPS?
Generic.
Oh, exactly. And that's the problem is that you don't start with generic. It's the same reason why you don't take someone who's dabbled in Windows and say, "Oh, by the way, here's command line Linux. Enjoy yourself."
Right. I hope you're Microsoft A+ certified, like
That doesn't even help you there.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. So I love GURPS as a system that is generic. It is the, how do I put it? Like the dice heavy, do whatever you want with it system.
Right, but that's honestly the main problem with it, and that's why I'm calling it out. My not for first time storytellers is because it is a generic system that tries to do everything.
Yep.
And it's designed to be modular in a sense where you only select the rules that you feel you need to play your game with because it is generic, universal role playing system.
Exactly.
But that also makes it you kind of need to know all of the rules so you know which ones to use.
Right.
And you know which ones you're working around. And even the rules I think that are there, at least in my experience, I feel it's very rules dense, even if you do try to play a stripped down version of the game.
Right. I mean, you've also got like White Wolf, which kind of has a little heavy hand there in its rule system because you've got not just one world there either. You've got vampire, you've got werewolf, you've got Mage the Ascension, you've got scary shit in the dark, the book game.
They're all scary shit in the dark book games.
So, I mean, but each one of those, like if somebody says, "Hey, I'm running a vampire game," and one of your players like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to be a werewolf," you kind of give them that glaze of, "Oh crap, do I need to buy more books and learn?" And the short answer is yes.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So I would caution against White Wolf. If you're going to run a single genre setting of like just vampire, and like just core vampire, and no, you cannot play a fourth generation Simisi Lasombra hybrid. That's just keep things light if you are going to dabble in White Wolf. But I would say that's probably the more forgiving of the two.
Yeah, and then so let's talk about what they should do. Like, I think D&D 5th edition is good because there's a lot of good resources. There's a lot of good parts that make it simplistic. Mm-hmm. You can play with, I mean, they came out with an adventure module.
Yeah,
that literally is a box, buy it, and go play a damn game. Mm-hmm. Like, that's simple. I love that. You got Warrior Rogue Mage, is that right?
Yep, WRNM, Warrior Rogue and Mage. I pimped that out in our first.
Really simple rules, like super simple.
The entire rule book is free and 10 pages long.
Yeah, and I think 10 pages because it's really well spaced.
No, 10 pages because there's some charts and some artwork.
That's right.
It's like one whole page dedicated to the weapons chart.
Dungeon World, I learned in one sitting, and like it was more complex for me to learn it because I was trying to attach it to D&D, and that was a mistake.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that was I think those are good. I think the fantasy setting as a whole, it is good to go toward things that you can easily find. If there's resources there or adventure starts or predefined stuff, go that direction. Don't make it challenging for yourself on picking the system.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
And I would definitely say, if you're looking to go fantasy too, I would highly suggest something like D&D 5th edition over Pathfinder. And that's only because I know Rob is hemming and hawing at me right now.
No, I'm hemming and hawing only because the fact that I'm probably going to agree with everything you're going to say about 5th edition. But I'm not saying that Pathfinder is not a good alternative choice, only because there are great resources for Pathfinder as well. Not as good. I mean, I see your face. Okay.
So my counter argument to that is I feel like if you pick up the player's manual, you should be able to learn the game and not need external resources to explain to you what the hell is going on in the player's handbook.
It's hard.
I win and you know it.
Okay, I'll accept it. I'll accept it.
All right.
I'll accept it on that one.
D&D 5th edition went out of its way when they redesigned that system to be very newbie friendly and very welcoming to first time gamers. So and they did it well. Yeah. They did it very well. So I will continue to fly that banner.
And I am going to throw a huge side piece to this. You ready?
Okay.
The new BattleTech Quick Start is incredible. There's nothing to say you couldn't run it in that game system either. If you want to do giant mech role-playing, you can easily do it. You could have a whole campaign.
True. The only counter-argument I would have to BattleTech as a role-playing system is that it's really more of a strategy tabletop game than it is a role-playing system. Well, even back in its heyday when I played it a lot in high school,
right?
It was you weren't playing BattleTech as the role playing game. You were playing Mech Warrior was the role playing game.
I agree,
and that was all the out of the mech stuff. And I don't think they've redesigned any of the Mech Warrior stuff. I think it's just the BattleTech rules, right?
Pretty much. But I would say, as rule systems go, they've really got amazing resources and a single book. You can't beat that.
Sure. No, I'll give you that.
But again, it hits that same
far
merits.
be it for me not to suggest people play BattleTech.
I understand. after the 6.5 hour session.
Oh my god!
At least,
so great.
That was great. That was very fun.
Great.
All right, so now we move on to what do you need, and this is where I stepped in. Sarah had written some great notes on this, but the first thing I thought to say was, if the book doesn't call for it, don't go overboard. Like, start at the beginning. Look at the beginning of the book. The beginning of the book will tell you, hey, this is all you need. A couple sheets of paper, some pens, a couple of dice.
Exactly.
Go with that.
No, I am going to pull out, and I warned Rob I was going to do this. I'm going to pull out my walker. I'm going to pull out my AARP card, and I'm going to go all back in my day on you. That's right. Back in my day, we did not have a printer.
Nope.
We didn't have the internet. We did not have PDF files we could download. We didn't even have reliable access to a copy machine without having to try to sneak it at school or something.
I had to go to the library with a quarter and print stuff off.
Quarter-feeded copy machine in the library to photocopy the character sheet out of the back of the book.
If you had a book.
Yeah. Okay. We would write up our own character sheets on loose-leaf paper with a pencil. Okay, so when I say that you don't need a lot of stuff, do not go overboard to play your game. Understand that I mean that in the most extreme sense.
Yeah.
If you have loose leaf paper, if you have a notebook, a pencil, and literally one set of dice that the table can share as needed, you have everything you need to play that game.
Yep.
Preferably a copy of the rules. It's good if everybody has a copy so that they can reference their own rules, but that's not a must.
Nope.
At all. And a lot of these things can be digital nowadays, so you don't even have it as hard as Rob and I did back in the day.
And on your 4th game, you can go out and buy that bottle of Crown Royale and have your own bag.
There you go. Yeah. Everybody's first dice bag.
Everybody's first dice
bag.
So
mine was Captain Morgan Private Stock.
Ooh, good choice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah.
That's a good bag.
It was an apology gift for someone that cheated on my that my girlfriend cheated on me with.
Oh.
Yeah. They were like, sorry that happened.
Here's some liquor.
Here's a bottle of expensive liquor.
That's not even that expensive. Like, you could have they could have done so much better.
Oh, whatever. It tasted great.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Moving along. So, stories. Let's talk a little bit about what you should tell. And now, for me, I say that my brain works way too fast. I get creative. I start doing things. I start writing all this kind of crazy stuff up. But in truth, you don't have to do any of that. If I'm going to tell someone to start something, I would say grab something pre-made. Don't go over the top with it. You can add your own flavor. You can add your own spin. But you can get deep and loopy and convoluted and red herring filled and try and do all the crazy, Game of Thrones type of shit, and it could fail in your face. You need to learn who you are in telling a story before you get in. And even for existing storytellers, when you're beginning a new story, there's no reason why not to start out with something basic, something simple. And then once you're in and you know your players and who they're playing, they know who they're playing. Because a lot of times you'll get into a game, as a storyteller, I can say, I have known a number of times where players have come to me and say, I hate this character. Can I change characters? Now, if you've invested story into that, well, there you go. Gone. All right, what's going to happen?
Right.
So...
I mean, take for instance my game that we're all in right now.
Yeah.
I mean, what was our first session? It was we're going to a dungeon to collect a thing from the dungeon for the people who are our direct superiors.
Typical dungeon run.
And I told you guys flat out in out of game, like, this is a milk run. Yeah. This is designed for you guys to get to know everybody. Don't look for deep plot hooks here.
Nope.
Don't read conspiracy theories into any of this. I'm telling you right now, this is a get-to-know-you game.
And you just used a term that probably a bunch of our listeners won't know.
Milk run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually a Shadowrun term. And almost if you read Shadowrun and to tell stories in it, the first thing they tell you to do is run a milk run.
Yeah. As in running up. It's as easy as running to the corner store for a gallon of milk.
Now it's not going to turn out that way, and often many people die on milk runs. But
it's going to go. Boots up immediately.
Yeah,
but,
I heard where you were going with that.
Yeah.
I totally. Good job keeping the explicitive downs, but I don't even think that would be it. Although that might nick us on iTunes, but yeah.
Anyways,
yes. So just keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. The other thing is don't be afraid to improv. It's really good to prepare stuff. I myself am a very prepare everything. Prepare everything sort of person. I have pages upon pages upon pages upon pages of notes that I write incessantly about everything. But even last game session we played just this last Saturday.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, they could either do this, or they could do that, or they could do this. And I've got all three of those contingencies written out, and guess what they picked was option number 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that is definitely an option for them to pick that I didn't think of, so I guess we're just going to improv the whole middle of this story.
The whole thing that your players, in the end, will always pick possibility Z.
Yep.
When you give them 1, 2, and 3.
Yep. So do not be afraid to improv. Now.
Yeah.
When you are writing things, the most important question you can ask yourself, Rob.
Why?
Why?
Why are you doing this? No, I agree. I think that it's important, and I think Chris, when he was on the show with us, talked about it with NPCs.
Yes.
There needs to be a reason. If you know the reason why this is there or why this is going on in the scene, that's perfect. Yeah. Because that gives you that drive. You'll always remember it.
Sure.
And it doesn't let your players go, well, why did he just throw 30 goblins at us? You know why there's 30 goblins there. You have that answer in your head.
Yeah, it makes for a more cohesive story. So, for instance, we've got a couple notes jotted down here. Your milk run is perhaps that, you're all in a tavern and the mayor says, "Hey, I need some adventurers to go kill some goblins in the local dungeon."
Right.
Okay, that's simple. That's a great first game of just, you're going to get to know your players. It's a very clear-cut goal.
Yep.
You know exactly what's going on there. But what you should be doing when you're writing this stuff down is just ask why a couple times, okay? Why are there goblins in the dungeon?
Right.
Do
they live nearby? Did they move in because someone shoved them out of another area?
Is there something in that dungeon that they want?
And be prepared for the possibility that you may have that in your head, and you've got a good reason of why they're there. But strangely enough, your players will also come up with reasons because you haven't explained it. And you might be like, I like their reason a lot better because it makes way more sense than what I was thinking.
Yep.
So you're like, you've got these goblins in this dungeon because they came from a deeper area, and now they came up into the dungeon, through this crack that you had because you just saw it in the dungeon map. And then while you're doing this, your players go, "Oh no, we fought those trolls up the hill. They must have pushed them out of the foothills. Oh, so that's why these guys are here." And you're like, Yeah, that's totally why.
That's absolutely it. I mean, masterfully crafted that whole thing on my own. Thought of that.
That will happen all the time. You will always have times when your players come up with the weirdest things about plot, and you'll be like, that makes way more sense what I wrote down. So don't be afraid to accept some of that, so that you can incorporate it, because it's already in their minds. Why not run with it? That way it's a shared experience too, and you don't have to tell them that you're stealing it. You don't have to tell them you're even using that. You can just keep watching them and be like, yep, I'm going to go down that direction. That's the way I'm going to take this. I'm going to make that work, because inevitably it makes for a good story. So you get you have to be prepared to have a world that is cohesive, relatable, and realistic. If it doesn't make sense to you why they're there, it's never going to make sense to your players.
Now, the other piece of advice that I will drop in is probably the second most important thing you can say next to why, and that is yes and.
Oh, yeah. I do.
Okay.
I do like
now,
that.
this is an old improv thing, and what it essentially means is when your players do something, and it may seem goofy, it may seem off the wall, don't say no. Say yes. And continue the story.
Right.
So let me give you a quick example here. My game, the party rolls into a major city, and I had already kind of scoped out like what some of the kind of like the main tavern of the place was going to be, and I figured they're just going to walk in. They're going to be like, "Well, we go to the tavern." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I know what that place is." Right. I had the innkeeper and everything like that written down, and they walked in and they were like, "Nope, we're not going to stay at that inn. We want to stay somewhere more inconspicuous on the low-end side of town, while the party's resident asshole noble decides, I am not staying in that commoner inn. I need to appear like a noble in all ways, so I am going to stay at whatever the place that the visiting nobles stay in."
Yeah.
Now, I need to come up with 2 new inns that I did not have written down on the fly. So the first inn, I pulled up a random inn name generator, I think. There's a randomnamegenerator.com or something like that. And I flipped through it a couple times, came up with something neat, and on the fly kind of built a high-end tavern off of that was this like luxury suite place. While I'm doing this, the party at the end of the party that decided that they were going to stay at the low-end place have been powwowing at the other end of the table.
We were. It was terrible.
And announced to me, with mischievous grins on their faces, that they are going to be staying at the Surly Girl Scout Inn.
Yes.
Now, my eyes rolled so far back in my head, I saw my brain for like a hot second. Because I was like, the Surly Girl Scout, like we're in a fantasy realm. Like the Girl Scouts don't exist here. Like, okay, but it could just be Girl Scout,
correct.
Like a scout that is a woman.
Yes.
Like, okay.
And she's surly.
And she's surly. And people make weird names for their taverns all the time. And I kind of went, I rolled my eyes and I was like, no, you know what? This is happening.
This is fine. This is fine.
They want the Surly Girl Scout in. They're getting the surly Girl Scout in.
And we did, and it was horrific.
Oh, it was horrific. It was
place
the
to stay.
worst, moldiest, mustiest hole in the wall they have ever stayed in. And,
So we moved the next day.
but it was memorable.
It was memorable, and it will stay as
memorable.
a place, and it will be in that town because we named it, and therefore it's real.
And everybody got kind of a good chuckle out of it. It became a plot point, and we moved right the hell on. So
Before we leave improv and kind of close this kind of stuff up, one of the things that we had talked about a little bit was possibilities, and you have to be prepared for possibilities, and sometimes that requires you to think outside the box. But one of the things that kind of came to me in our discussions was that realistically, when you're designing a scene or a chamber or whatever, you need to be prepared for the possibilities that they're not going to find what they're looking for or not do the thing. Like you were talking about the key.
Yes.
And I thought that was a great example where players are going into a scenario and they were given an option to search a room. Now, you may say the key is in the safe. Well, they've got to find the safe behind the painting, behind the whatever.
Right.
To find it.
But it's an important plot point that they find the key.
Correct.
And that's the important part of this.
So you have to say, okay, if they're searching, there's no reason why the key can't be somewhere else. It's not so important that it's there, that all of the things have to fall in line. So you need to be prepared for that possibility, kind of like an escape room. The players just need to leave the room. There's going to be all kinds of stuff in said room and things for them to do. So you need to be prepared for those possibilities that they may do those things. But only weigh in your mind the value of that against moving them forward in the plot, not railroading. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But moving them forward through that scene.
Right. Understanding what's important about the scene and what isn't necessarily. Like you may have written in your notes that the key is in a safe, but you didn't bring the party's rogue with you because the rogue is being a jerk and decided
maybe
not to
they're
come
sick
along.
for the night.
Or maybe that character's just literally not there.
Yeah.
So that thing in the locked safe, well, they're not going to get it now. So maybe it's in the dresser drawer. Well, they didn't search the dresser drawer, but they did search the cupboard.
Good enough.
Guess what? The key's now in the cupboard. And you know what? That player's never going to know that you moved it from place to place to place. And they're going to feel really, really good about themselves for having the insight to think in that cupboard. Oh my God, if I hadn't searched the cupboard,
Right.
I would never have found that key.
Exactly. And then you also have, like I was just talking about with railroading, that's, I think, something to be exceptionally careful of.
Right. That's the far end of this.
It's so easy to take it too far and to try and say, no, this is where I want this plot to go. They need to go this direction, and have your players just not enjoy it, not want to do that. And I think that is where you quickly devolve into a solid, straightforward narrative, and that can get painful and can get very slow. So don't try to do that. It's easy to fall into it.
I think there's an aspect of yes and there as well. If your characters decide, well, okay, you want us to go into this dungeon, but I'm really interested in the story about that bride that's getting married to someone she didn't want to marry.
Yeah.
We want to tell that story.
Right.
And
to hell with those bridesmaids and what they might not want to wear on their feet. Sorry.
So,
inside joke with Kate here. We just had to keep her laughing.
You may end up throwing away a handful of notes. You may not get to that dungeon, but if they say, well, we're turning around and we're having this adventure over here, you may want to chase it.
Yeah.
And I think there's certain aspects of like, and this probably delves back into that whole selecting your group point number one thing of having a discussion prior to creating your game about what type of game your players want to play.
Open world, straightforward plot, simplistic, dungeon crawl. Get it out on the table.
Yeah, like if nobody wants to play a dungeon crawl and you line up a dungeon crawl for them, of course they're going to go chasing after that side plot because nobody wants to be in the dungeon.
Right. Or if they're like, we don't know what we want to do. Let's make it open world and see where it goes.
Sure.
Great. Be prepared for that.
And be prepared to improv a lot if you do that, yeah.
But one of the things you wrote on here in giant black lettering that is non-confrontational is don't panic. Shit's going to happen.
This is a game.
Enjoy yourself.
You're all there to have fun.
It's just supposed to be fun. One of the things I put in here before we get to kind of wrap up on this, literally wrap up, is your players are going to tell you how awesome of a time they had about something. And you may be like, that was something I came up with on the fly, and it kind of felt stupid that I did it, but it worked, and they enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. Don't say that. Just accept the effing praise.
Oh, yeah.
Learn from it. Learn what went good about that, what didn't work with it. And that's one of the things that we've done on a lot of our game sessions now.
Yeah.
Is that at the end of your session, one of the things you do is wrap up. And I witnessed one person do it in the past. Mm-hmm. Chris has done it a couple of times. But we've kind of turned it into almost like, I guess, a positional art where we say, okay, you go through your players and you say, did you have fun? Did you like a certain aspect about it? What didn't you like?
What was your favorite thing that happened tonight? And you watch their face light up, and they say that part where I saw that guy shove that kid, and I just snapped, and I pulled my bow out, and I put 2 arrows right in his chest. Just made me feel like the big damn hero.
Yeah.
And everybody's sitting around the table going, "Yeah, that was amazing," and you all kind of get to relive that.
Yeah.
But then the second question you ask,
that
we both ask, because I absolutely stole this from you.
No, totally.
Is what was your pain point tonight? What could I have done different to make your gaming experience better?
Yeah. And I like how you, in yours, are directing it away from the other players. Mm-hmm. That it's not, I didn't like what this person did, or I didn't like this thing. You know, they might talk about the rules. They might talk about some rule aspect that bothered them. They might talk about how the interaction maybe bothered them or something like that. But the idea is that it's something to grow on.
Yeah.
As a storyteller.
And it's not just for low points in the story, because some of my players were doing that too, where they were like, "Oh, I didn't like that the bad guy stabbed me." Well, nobody likes that. But what I'm asking for is, how can I grow as a storyteller to help make your gaming experience better?
Exactly.
Did I allow too much bickering at the table? Are you just not understanding my plot, or did you find a certain aspect of the story disturbing, or whatever?
Right.
Just give it to me so I can help improve.
Yeah. And I think doing that is not only really effective as a storyteller to get that feedback and to do it right at the end of the game. Don't wait. Like, don't give it to them as a questionnaire they can do later.
Minds, yeah.
Because you want that instant recall, because by the time they get to the next session, they're not going to remember.
Yep. Hell, by the time they get out to their car, the details may be fuzzy.
Yeah, but hopefully your games go in such a way that when you do that recall, as they're all going to their cars or getting on the train to head back home or whatever, they're all like, "Yeah, you remember that one part? Oh, yeah, you told me about that." And they're all talking about it.
Absolutely.
And then the next time they come in, it's not in their minds because maybe it's been a month later, but you've got that to come back to every time, and you remember, and you've got your notes to say, "Okay, I need to work on this, or I need to change this up."
Yep.
So
one last thing about game wrap up that I don't have written down here on my notes, and that is the exact topic of notes.
Right.
Storytellers, new storytellers, learn from our fails, write things down. If it is an important NPC you made up on the fly, jot them down. Jot their name and their profession. Nothing else. If nothing else, do at least that.
Yes.
Because they will be like, "Oh, hey, let's go back to that blacksmith. What was his name again?"
Shit.
Oh, God, I don't know. It was a month and a half ago, man.
Right. I like what Chris said, which was the moment that they're named, write it down.
Write it down. Yes.
Like the moment you have to come up with a name for something, write that name down, write something simple about it.
But importantly, though, write, and then like a D&D Beyond is really good for this, because we play D&D 5th edition. I use D&D Beyond for it, and it's got a campaign notes section in the campaign. Is the very first thing I do either that night or the next morning, I will go in and write a 4-paragraph recap of what happened in that entire game. All the major points.
Yep.
And so that way we can begin the next game. First off, any of my players can reference that at any time. I can reference that at any time.
Yep.
And we begin the next game session by rereading that recap.
Yep.
So that everybody gets a real, because it's been a month.
It's like a show recap.
Yeah.
You want to do that.
Previously on Supernatural.
Exactly. That's the kind of thing that people need, because I'm sorry, as I'm getting older, I'm not remembering much.
Yeah.
If I'm in multiple games, it makes it even more challenging.
Well, look, we all work at least 40 hours a week. We've got, some of us have families. And,
some of us have medical issues that come in the middle between it.
Yeah, exactly.
Holidays.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on. And, after a month of not being at the table, it's been 15 minutes for your characters. It's been 30 days for you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
I mean, I don't know how many times that I've stepped into a digital game that I haven't touched for a week or something, and I immediately go to the quest log. I'm like, what the hell was I doing?
Oh hell! I have to restart Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice at this point because I have lost all my muscle memory while I was playing another game.
Yep.
Like
Totally different game.
I can't even get back in. Like if I can't even remember which buttons to push, you think I'm going to remember the story? Like
Exactly. So, no, I think, and there's definitely stuff that we've probably haven't covered that some of the storytellers who are listening, who've been doing it for a long time, they're going to say, "Ooh, also this." Throw that in our Discord.
Throw it in the Discord. By all
Help us
means.
out by it. Help everyone else by it. This is the whole point of this. Is we love the discourse that you have in our Discord. I love seeing when the questions come up and people start answering or working on the questions in the question section. I'd really like you guys to move that over to the question discussion session. I appreciate that you're interested, and sometimes you're asking each other questions.
But
that's
I
fine.
love the enthusiasm.
It is very enthusiastic. I will try and continue to push you guys over to the question discussion section, because what helps us with is when we get to this point in the show, we can go through that very quickly and pull those questions out of there and know what's a question for us to be asking on the show and what's a question for that's under discourse that we may want to turn into a show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So help us a little, but at the same time, keep it up. It's been fantastic. We love going through that.
And I'll just come out and say it. This entire show today happened because Knox in the Box was on our Discord and was making some slight rumblings that leaned in kind of the direction of maybe running his own game, and I was like, all right, well I have to if you're teetering on the edge, I'm going to reach out and give you a push, buddy. So
all right, speaking of questions, we have questions, and we've got about 20 minutes ishy, so let's go ahead and jump right into those. So I will open up the table against you.
All right.
This is from Mad Elf. So without a tabletop game becoming a LARP session, how about a more detailed discussion on the use of objects, props, miniatures, tabletop scenery, the advantages and the challenges in comparison the minimalist use of the materials beyond character sheets and dice?
Okay.
Jeebus.
Yeah, that's
a
okay.
lot to take in.
Yep.
But personally, I would say the advantage of doing anything more than just paper, pen, and the mind's eye is helping people. I mean, Sean made it very clear that with us that there are many reasons to add props, to add color, to add flavor to your game that go beyond just that, adding color and flavor.
Sure.
Sometimes people need that as a guidepost. Sometimes people need it to help have a better understanding of what's going on. I know for me that when I'm playing a game that involves miniatures, it helps me see the combat much more clearly.
Absolutely.
And that it makes the danger seem more realistic or less realistic than I'm envisioning it in my own head. So I think that's definitely advantages. I think the challenges in doing that is it can slow things down. It can bring it to a pace where people are like, oh, for God's sakes, the fighters are fighting and I'm just going to sit back here and twiddle my thumbs. I can't do anything. I'm not effective. And that can definitely slow things down. The other thing is the use of too much technology that it actually becomes a burden to get things moving when you're doing it.
Yep. I think those are all great points. I would say what comes to mind is dependency. Sometimes, like if you are playing with miniatures and props and such like that regularly and terrain and whatnot, the very next time you don't, you're going to be like, oh, well.
Yeah, sorry, you showed your A game. Yeah. It's like your boss. You don't walk in on your first day of work and do your most amazing work because guess what? He's going to expect that every damn day.
Yep.
So don't start with your A game. Don't start with the A game.
Don't start with your A game. The other thing, too, is, you have to keep in mind that every single one of these external props or miniature or anything like that takes time.
Yep.
Can potentially take money.
Yeah, there's a cost one way or another.
Yeah, mind's eye costs nothing because all you got to do is just shut your eyes and imagine. But, printing Hero Forge minis and painting them and going to Home Depot and raiding it for a bunch of miniature supplies and foam and going home, taking that home and painting it, and you got to make a trip to Michael's because you're out of Mod Podge, and I could go on.
I'm going to let you stop.
Nope. You just let me stop right there.
I'm going to let you stop right there.
But yeah, it can get expensive and it can get really involved real quick. So
Yeah, weigh it against your time and your own efforts, I think.
Yeah, it's mostly about finding your own balance. I think the other thing too, and mostly because this is dedicated to new storytellers. This particular show, I will say that there is an advantage to coming up with that sort of stuff because, well, first off, you can delegate a little bit of it too.
True.
And this is actually kind of, I think, one of the other questions that might have gotten asked. By Draven, a little bit further down the list, but
Okay.
we're not gonna jump to the question. I'm just gonna say this kind of dovetails into an answer to that question.
All right.
For instance, the train.
Why aren't you?
Well, because it's jumping past like 2 other questions.
Well, we can come back to those. They're not in any order.
Okay.
Come on, let's make this organic.
All right,
So
fair
Draven,
enough.
just so you guys are aware.
Okay.
Draven's asking, I'm curious about your thoughts on delegating DM tasks to players. And I was interested to see where we were going to go with this. For example, I often show a digital version of the map when I go into combat. I have players draw it out on a grid. I've heard other DMs leave it to the players to track enemy health. Do you do anything like that? And I do think this fits right into that.
So what I was saying is, like, if you guys decide as a group that you do want to play with terrain and stuff, delegate it.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping your players from creating little ruins, scatter terrain,
Heck
or
yeah.
little barrels or rocks or something like that.
Exactly.
One of our players brings a fully built houses and trees that looked spectacular
Yep.
in our last game.
Because he loves doing that stuff,
Yeah,
too.
and honestly, just as a storyteller, I don't have time to make all that stuff. So if your players are willing to pitch in and maybe they already have some of the stuff on hand, by all means, delegate that task out to them.
I mean, if this was in sports games, whose week is it to bring the oranges? That kind of stuff always happens. But you need to do that to make it a community, not just a DM who is now having to, be at the beck and call of his players.
Right. And keeping in mind, too, that those are not resources that necessarily get used up.
Right.
So once you have a bucket full of scatter terrain to put on your brand shiny new little board
Right.
with your grid, drawn out on it,
Yep.
you've got it.
Yep.
That's it, period. Forevermore, you can use that unless somebody does something like spills a beer on it or
Lights it
something.
on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, not an effect you should do. Just leaving that out.
Highly discouraged.
So this comes to then, I would say, this kind of does move into Matt Elf's other question, which was how to determine and set up your play space. What factors go into decisions, number of players, space needed for equipment, dice, poker chips, minis, stuff like that, laptop, tables, chairs, the GM territory, audio quality of the space, room temperature, blah, blah, blah.
Biggest house so that we're not crammed in like sardines and has air conditioning. That's...
I mean...
and is willing to host.
For me, I think the play space is about having the space you need, having it be comfortable, but not so comfortable that people are falling asleep, having it be available to what you need it to be. For instance, if I'm going to play Battletech, I'm not going to do it on a train.
Yeah.
You just can't do that kind of stuff. But I could probably do a D&D game on a train, with one little rolling surface is all you need, really. Sure. But, it's accommodating the system, accommodating the people, and accommodating the comfort level. And I totally agree with you, whoever's got the biggest house, that is centrally located and that fits for what you're doing.
The other thing to keep in mind too, and this is one of those things. Like I love playing at your place.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but there's every single time I'm hauling stuff out to my car, I'm like, we're not playing at my place anymore.
Yep. Nope. I'm with you.
But I am very conscious that my place is not big enough to host 6 people and me
Comfortably.
comfortably.
I mean, we
at
could
least.
do it, but it would be
all
uncomfortable.
be crammed in like sardines. Anybody needs to get up, get snacks, or go to the bathroom. We'd be crawling all over each other. It's
Exactly.
So
And I would say be accommodating because things change.
sure.
I mean, I've been in game sessions where we've been playing and then somebody has an injury. So you may have to change venues.
Sure.
Like we moved to a friend's house because she was sick.
Yep.
And we played, we were like, okay, well, we'll play on your couch. Well, isn't it going to make it challenging? We don't effing care. We'll work around that. We'll get tray tables set up. People will bring food. No big deal.
Yeah. The important thing is we wanted our friends to get together and play a fun game.
So I would say to determine and set up your play space, it's not so much a setup. It's a prepare for the best situation so that everyone can enjoy themselves and be heard and be understood. You may have to shift at times. You may have to move people to certain positions because of things at the table. but it needs to be comfortable and it needs to be friendly for the
absolutely.
environment.
Absolutely.
So, all right.
All
What
right,
else we
so
got?
Technolich asks, how do you handle side communications from the DM to player, i.e. notes, text messages, take the player into another room, etc.? What works best and worst for your group? All right, well, I kind of do a little combination of all these things. I guess it depends on the needs. I have been known to do the DM whisper.
Right.
I have been known to take notes from, passed or, around the table from somebody. I've received text messages. I have outright, if it seems like it's going to be a whole side scene that, does not involve the other players and I don't necessarily want to play that out in front of them. If I do want it secret for some reason, I will take them in the other room.
Yeah, I always have... I take a little issue with the whole side room thing.
Yeah, it's not something I like to use.
Yeah, I don't mind passing notes. I don't mind getting the text messages. I don't mind that kind of stuff as long as it's limited, is effective in either speeding up gameplay or helping with understanding. I think that's both good reasons to do that. But I think the whole pulling into another room thing, unless it is a major plot point and the person is doing something because they need either help, like for instance, you've got a player who might be struggling, and one of the things early on is you said, you have this oracle ability that gives you a little bit of future sight. Like, yeah, maybe pull them to another room and be like, okay, what's going on? And they'll be like, well, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I should have a better understanding. So I pulled oracle. Okay, here's what's going on that you know. And paint the picture for them in a very vivid way, and then they can come back and they have they feel a little bit more rock star.
Look like a badass because they can walk in and go, "This is this and that's that." And they're like, "How do you know all this mystical stuff?"
Exactly. But I think as long as the method that is being used in a constructive way, and you don't have a player who's just constantly sending notes to the DM, basically saying, "Next round, I'm going to stab player B in the back and steal their money." Or I'm pickpocketing this person, even though we all agreed we weren't going to rob anything in town. And I don't want my players to know. The answer is no. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm pickpocketing so-and-so. Everybody roll perception except for you. Okay. Roll your skill. Okay, by the way, that guy's totally stealing shit right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be a side thing, because the idea is that it's actively happening in the scene. The players need to know about this. That helps with role play.
Well, it's also not D&D for one.
Correct.
You've got 3 to 5 other people at the table with you, ideally.
Yeah.
And, it gets very trying for other people when they show up to a game and you've got one player who's constantly like, well, I do this. Well, I do that. Well, I do this. And they're passing you notes and just...
I think it kind of goes with good storytelling is don't show favoritism.
Yeah.
It's a game for everybody.
That's
like don't wrap your plots around that. Don't let them drag the plot in a specific direction. They can have some plot, but don't focus hard on a player just because they're the loudest.
The one last bit of input I will give about the whole take the player to the other room thing is the obligatory mention of Critical Role for this episode. You knew it was coming.
Dude, are you advertising for them now? Is this a thing? Are we not getting funded? Like, we need to talk about this.
I'm working on a sponsorship here, man. If you just, where you are right now is on my back, and what I'd really like you to be is off of my back.
Okay.
But early on, he had Matthew had a big plot reveal for one of the characters where he was having these dream sequences.
Yeah.
And he began that by saying, I would like everybody but this player to leave the table.
Yeah.
And they did. And he had this one-on-one scene for like 15 minutes or something like that where everybody was off in the green room or whatever.
Right.
And then he asked the staff to call them back, and they all came back. And they were talking about that a little bit later off camera, and they were saying, well, he's like, in retrospect, I regret kind of doing that. Mm-hmm. Like, not that, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that was the wrong choice in the time.
Okay.
And simply because that was 6 other players that did not get to experience the game.
Right.
For that 15
the story,
minutes.
Yeah.
And honestly, all that stuff's going to come out with time anyways.
Yeah.
And we're all adults at this table. They all know that they don't know what happened in this character's dreams.
Right.
So they're not going to bring it in game.
Right.
I trust them to do that. I don't need to ask them to leave the table and not experience my game for that time.
I think that comes into a lot of it that we'll eventually get to with the picking the right players is trust is a huge thing.
Trust is a huge thing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that. Okay. Technolich had a pretty decent question. I am pretty passive personality, read occasionally doormat. How do you recommend dealing with pushy players?
Oof.
That is a very, very challenging question on multiple levels, and it kind of comes back to picking your group. And it also comes to, what do you mean by pushy? There are players who are of different types. You've got the guys, or I should say the guys, you've got the players who know the rules back and forth and up and down and will literally berate you because you don't know rule X at the table, even though you're the storyteller and your thing is final. You've got your players who know the plot and know exactly what's going on, even though you're the storyteller. You've got all kinds of groups and individuals and dynamics that can be very dominating. And I think one of the things you've got to be mindful of as the storyteller is you are the authority. At that table, what you say and what you do to move that story forward is law. And that's what you need to put down. It's not a matter of them being pushy. You can just be silent while they're being pushy and stare at them with that, 50-yard stare like, you done? Are you done? Because when you're done, it's my turn. And I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. And all they can say is, well, I don't want to play anymore. And the answer is, then
okay,
don't.
Bye.
If you're not
Felicia.
enjoying yourself, because I'm not enjoying myself, and you're clearly having the rest of the players not enjoy themselves because you're being this overburdening person who's literally pushing the entire game in a direction, then maybe that person shouldn't be at your table. Maybe they just need to be in another game. And that's okay. Because the idea is that everybody has a good time. And that includes you as a storyteller. Don't ever let people walk all over you.
No, I will add one other thing to this, and that is just don't be afraid. You definitely need to put your foot down sometimes, but at the same time, don't be afraid to have a little self-reflection as well. There's a difference between pushy and enthusiastic.
I agree.
And I think recognizing that difference is very important because sometimes the reason somebody gets pushy is because something is important to them. And they're not having if they're getting pushy about it, it's because they're not having the experience that they want at your table. And rather than just put your foot down sometimes, and again, this is recognizing a fine line. Absolutely. There are times when you should and absolutely must put your foot down.
Right.
Okay, so this is not saying that anything Rob just said is wrong. But it may be good to take a moment just to say, did I mess this up?
Right.
Is there something I could do in this instance to make this player's experience better? And instead of maybe putting my foot down and saying, well, that's just the way it is, like it or leave it, say, okay, what did you expect to happen here?
Right.
What was the outcome you were hoping for so that I can better understand why this whole situation agitated you and made you pushy in the first place?
Right.
Because if I can better understand your wants and needs in this story, if I understand the type of story you're trying to tell with this character in this world, then I can help you tell that story. Sean and I actually had a very good discussion between games a couple days ago. We were just going out for pizza, and we were idly discussing my game. And he said something effective like, well, I did want to hire that mage, but as my personal accolade guy, but you poo-pooed that idea, and I guess you just didn't want me to. And I was like, well, no, it's not that I didn't want you to. It's just I don't really understand the point of why you wanted to hire just some random NPC.
Right.
What do you want NPCs for?
Right.
And he says, well, I'm a noble, and I'm trying to build a business, and I want to be able to hire them out to take care of things for me because that's what my character does. I'm trying to explore the benefits of having a high charisma character and use my leadership and high charisma and noble station as a benefit to the group so that they can take care of all the little menial tasks so that we can take care of the heroic stuff. And I'm like, well, when you phrase it like that,
Right.
that's amazing.
But sometimes you got to step away from the table and have that conversation. Right. So I 100% agree with you on that. I think there is definitely a time to step back and talk to that person and have a conversation with them about what they're going for.
Yep.
But again, there's a difference between enthusiasm and pushing a story in a direction and from a player's position, trying to railroad the party as a leader. Mm-hmm. And if they're doing it as a character and it's not as their leadership and they're like, my character's pushing us this way, okay, make sure that everybody at the table understands that.
Yep.
That's another thing, because I have watched games where people have been their character has been railroading because they are on a vindictive, courageous or justified journey. But when they step back and they're talking to the rest of the players, they're like, by the way, this wasn't my thing. This is my character's thing. So if you guys don't like it, feel free to tie him up in the corner and tell him to shut the hell up.
Right, right. And I think that's also like a very good point. Don't be afraid to break character and go, guys, I know this is getting heated. Are we all cool?
Yeah.
Because this is my character being a jerk, not me. We're good.
Yep.
All right, good. Game on.
Yeah, and I think that is something that we should start stepping into. And I think we're going to do something weird. We're going to do something weird. We're going to step away from these questions.
All right.
Our next week topic is blank.
It is.
We have nothing.
It is. We actually utterly failed to discuss
totally failed to talk about what we're going to do next week. So
this is at the beginning of the end,
beginning of the end for all of us. So I think based on where we kind of went with today, maybe next week we start talking about players.
I think it's a good move.
I think we got a couple of different shows that we're going to talk about. So we'll come up with some catchy title for it. But effectively, let's talk about where we want to go with players. And I'm going to do a little bit of, I guess, Discord searching with you folks. Let's take a few, I guess, laps on the Discord and see what people want out of this. So I'm going to ask Discord this question. For those of you who have listened, for those of you who got into the who have heard us live and or are getting into our discussions as a group, what would you like to hear? Would you like to hear us talk about types of players that we like getting, or what to do once a group gets formed and how to kind of figure out players? What kind of player questions do you have as storytellers? Have you made a group? Have you been part of an existing group that's had problems? Throw us some questions about players in specific, and we will craft a new topic around this, and we'll drive right into it. Maybe we'll just do questions all next show. That would be weird.
Great idea. I think we made it pretty clear we could monologue for a good while on it, but I think it's it definitely, if we can make this a lot more interactive, I suppose.
Yeah, why not have a good
great. I would love to have that speak directly to our listeners' concerns and such like that. So.
Yeah. So I think, in a strange way, we kind of hit this show at a good pace.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all set.
Ain't that a little crazy? Well,
all right. Well, I guess we will see you all next week. I do want to thank everybody for joining us tonight.
You can find us on Twitter at @ST_conclave, Instagram, which is just @ST_conclave. And, of course, if you're on our Discord, you're doing it right. If you're not, get on our Twitter and click the link.
I want to also thank our people who made our intro music and our outro music. Our intro is Beyond the Warriors by Gooey Frog, and our outro music is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find those tracks and so many great more ones on freemusicarchive.org.
We record everything here at Podcast Detroit, which you can find at Podcast Detroit on Twitter. Our engineer is Kate, and we love her, even though she has all kinds of crazy problems that we don't talk about on the show. Maybe that'll be a show one day.
The shoes.
But we'd also like to thank our families. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Sean, for letting us do this, and all of our friends who make our games so great.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.